It's really a thrill for me to introduce Sarah Pekkanen and Greer Hendricks tonight. I've known Sarah for close to 20 years, back when she was on the cusp of publishing her first novel, and now here she is back at P&P with her eighth novel. This one written with her longtime editor, Greer Hendricks. I'm not going to talk too much about the book itself. I'll leave that to the authors, but I will tell you that it really ought to come with a warning. I picked it up 2 days ago just intending to get a feel for the book, and I'd go back and read it later over the weekend when I had more time, and I really could not put it down. I lost 2 days of work. I turned the last page about an hour ago, so it's very twisty, psychological thriller that's being compared to Gone Girl and Girl on the Train, and in fact, it's already been optioned by the same team that did the Girl on the Train. So. Many of you probably know Sarah and Greer, but I'll tell you Sarah's local. She lives in Chevy Chase. She's worked at the Baltimore Sun. Her work has appeared at the in the Washington Post, the Washingtonian, Bethesda Magazine, various other places. And Greer has spent over 2 decades as an editor at Simon & Schuster, and her work has also appeared in the New York Times and Publishers Weekly, and The Wife Between Us is her first novel. So they're going to be in conversation, and then they'll take your questions, and then there'll be a signing right here. So please help me welcome Sarah Pekkanen and Greer Hendricks.
So what we're going to do tonight is Greer is going to start by reading our prologue to The Wife Between Us. Then we're going to talk a bit about our process, about the story behind the book, and then we'll take your questions. So I think you've probably heard a bit about the book, but The Wife Between Us is on the surface a story of a woman whose wealthy husband leaves her and divorces her and finds a replacement, a woman who looks very much like her and acts much like she did 10 years ago. And this, our main character, becomes obsessed with the idea of stopping the wedding. So with that...
I'm not going to stop you from saying any more then.
Yep.
She walks briskly down the city sidewalk, her blonde hair bouncing against her shoulders, her cheeks flushed, a gym bag looped over her forearm. When she reaches her apartment building, her hand dips into her purse and pulls out her keys. The street is loud and busy, with yellow cabs racing by, commuters returning from work, and shoppers entering the deli on the corner. But my eyes never stray from her. She pauses in her entryway and briefly glances back over her shoulder. An electrical charge seems to pulse through me. I wonder if she feels my stare. Gaze detection, it's called, our ability to sense when someone is observing us. An entire system of the human brain is devoted to this genetic inheritance from our ancestors, who relied on the trait to avoid becoming an animal's prey. I've cultivated this defense in myself, the sensation of static rising over my skin as my head instinctively lifts to search out a pair of eyes. I've learned the danger of dismissing this warning. But she simply turns in the opposite direction, then opens her door and disappears inside, never looking my way. She is oblivious to what I have done to her. She is unaware of the damage I have wrought, the ruin I have set in motion. To this beautiful young woman, with the heart-shaped face and lush body, the woman my husband Richard left me for, I'm as invisible as the pigeons scavenging on the sidewalk next to me. She has no idea what will happen to her if she continues like this. None at all. Bum, bum, bum.
All right, so the first thing most people want to know is how did Greer and I meet? And it was a while ago.
Yeah.
I knew about Greer's reputation because she edited some authors I adored. And so when I wrote my debut novel and signed with an agent, I said there's an editor who's at the top of my list. She's like my literary Harvard. This is a dream
You used to
editor.
call me George Clooney.
I did. I called her George Clooney because, that was sort of the equivalent. Yeah, we've had a lot of nicknames. But I said, I really want to work with Greer. So she submitted my book to some agents and then called me and said, Greer wants to meet you. Get up to New York.
Yeah, so I was at a point in my career where I was fortunate enough to be able to, I guess I'd say, interview the authors who I was interested in. I loved Sarah's work, but it was really important to me that I formed a connection with the author. I was looking for a marriage, not a one-night stand, and I just wanted to work with nice, smart people. So, of course, I was not alone in wanting Sarah's debut, so her agent brought her around to meet a few editors. But then the moment that she walked into my office, we just had this instant connection. And then I luckily won out over all those other editors and
It
acquired.
really wasn't a contest. I know my agent probably pretended that.
But it was so we started working together, and then over the course of the 7 books that we worked on together, we got to know each other, better and better, and became more than just author-editor. We became friends, and we discovered we had an uncanny number of similarities. That you don't like when I lead with the ones like, we're both terrible cooks.
You can start off positive,
Okay.
highlight our good things.
Okay,
Right.
let me think. We both played field hockey in high school.
Studied journalism and psychology.
Yeah. We're both really close with our brothers, who are both named Robert. What else? We're the exact same age, although I'm 2 months younger.
Bring that up as often as you can. It's actually 6 weeks right now.
You have counted. So anyway, so we became quite close.
Yeah.
And then after nearly 20 years in publishing, I decided I wanted to try something new, take a break, and I did some editorial work in consulting. But in the back of my mind, I wanted to write fiction. And I didn't really want to tell anyone about this because a lot of people want to write fiction, and it's really hard to write a book. But one of the people I confessed to for some crazy reason was Sarah. And she was very supportive, so supportive that
I said, I've just finished a book. Let's write one together.
And I said, why in the world does she want to write with me? She's written 7 books on her own. This what's in it for her? And so I don't know. You were sort of persuasive.
Greer kind of played a little hard to get. She said, I need 24 hours to think about it.
That's exactly.
And this is actually a key part of our process writing together, too. I'm very instinctive.
Yes, this is true.
Some occasionally impulsive, one might say. Perhaps
I'm-
one has it.
yeah.
But the other is a little bit analytical, kind of holds back a bit. So even the way we kind of came together.
That's
to
true.
write
That's
this book.
interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but so I did. I had to think about it, and then I thought to myself, "Well, this is like this could be a masterclass in learning how to write." I've written articles, I've edited hundreds of books, but I've never written a book. I have no idea how to write a book. So I did. I called her. I emailed you at like
12 hours.
5 in the morning, and said, "Let's do it." And then the challenge, though, is what were we going to write? I mean, it's all well and good to say, okay, we're going to write together, but we had to figure out what we were going to write, and so. We did this exercise where we each, first of all, I live in New York, so we weren't doing any of this together. We were on the phone, and we decided to lay out all the books that we both had really responded to over, our lifetimes. And certain themes came up. We were really drawn to books that had strong female protagonists and were psychological in nature.
But then the trick became, so we knew early on we wanted to write a psychological thriller. And that was a shift for both of us. I had written 7 novels that were considered women's fiction, and that's primarily what Greer had edited.
Yeah.
But it was like a great quirk, just a chance of fate that we both wanted to write a psychological thriller. But the trick then became the logistics. She's in New York, I'm in DC, and generally co-authors will each take a character or trade a chapter back and forth. But we knew early on we actually wanted to write every line together. We just didn't know how we could do it.
Yes. So my 15-year-old daughter, who's much more tech savvy than I am, said, "Hey, Mom, there's this thing called Google Docs and Google Hangouts, and you can actually have a screen, and both of you can be looking at the same screen as different screens, but seeing the same thing at the same time." This was like magic to us. So, and then we could actually talk to each other. So that really was. We kind of say it's like the third partner in our relationship was Google Docs.
it's also our greatest
Nemesis,
challenge
yes,
at
it is
times.
our nemesis because we're not good with technology, and our kids are at school during the day when we're writing. So we have the screen in which we're both writing, and then you can type a conversation in a little bubble. And so if you scroll back about 100 pages, it's like, hello, I can hear you breathing. Hello, can you hear me?
Right. I
You
hear
know,
your dog barking.
Call me back. Okay, darn. Okay, try again. Just on and on. We probably have written a book.
We've
that
written a
dialogue,
book.
yeah.
I know. It's embarrassing, but true. And then I guess the other part is that we don't do everything apart. About once a month, we also go to each other's cities. So I'll come to DC, or Sarah will come to New York, and we go to a hotel, and that's when we try to do more of our plotting. If we're plotting out a new section or a new book, hypothetically, we'll try to do that when we're together. And we get these giant Postits. And this is, again, where one of our other differences come into play. Because Sarah, well, I don't know. A lot of you are her friends, so this may not surprise
I
you.
like it messy.
She likes it
I
really
like it
messy.
like a mosaic all over the wall. I like it homelanded, like Carrie on Homeland.
Yeah. It's scattered. The messier, the better.
And Greer is walking over, like straightening the edges.
I
and
can't
like,
concentrate. I
Can I
cannot.
just pull this down.
I don't understand how it doesn't make any sense to me that way. So I'm like straightening it all up.
But we have a little process for that. We have like a 24-hour window because we have 5 kids between us. So we kind of maximize. Yeah, that came out wrong. We kind of maximize our time in that Greer will say come to DC, arrive around noon. We'll meet. We'll be in exercise clothes because when we get blocked, we need to walk around the block. We'll sit and we'll work. We'll hit our target for the day, whatever it is. Then we'll reward ourselves with dinner at one of 2
wine and
restaurants.
sushi.
Wine and sushi. And then the next day we start all over again and just work until we have to leave the city.
Yeah. And most of the time the system works pretty well. One time,
Oh, yeah. So we were, we write dark books. Like we write, psychological, twisty, gone girly books. And so we like to throw out wacky ideas. So we were tossing around ideas. They were kind of wacky. There may have been a sex scene involved. And plastering it on the messy, messy walls that Greer was trying to clean up.
Right.
And
then we always run out of time.
Yes.
There's never enough time. So inevitably, I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go catch a train. Or Sarah's like, I've got to go catch my bus. So it always ends up being this mad scramble at the end. So in this case, we were in DC, right? I think. So I'm like scrambling, packing my bags. You were in charge of taking down the walls.
I took photos, but I was going to take down the wall. But I forgot. So this poor cleaning lady comes in, the hotel maid, and is seeing the walls homelanded with sex terms and
Yeah, I know. Wait, there are children
stabbing
here, Sarah.
murders.
There are children here. So.
That's a PG term.
Okay, that is true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
And that's my nephew. It's okay. He's
I
2.
know.
He doesn't know.
Yeah, he doesn't know anything. Last night we were in New York City where my kids were, and I was like, oh God.
Don't say the word that we
Right.
wrote on the wall.
Yeah, don't. Even though they, I'm sure, know far worse words than we would
Probably.
ever have written.
Yes.
What else do we ask?
You've got to talk about the time you made me drink.
Oh, okay, yes. So it's not all hard work. I mean, even if it sounds like we're really working away all day long, but sometimes we have to do research, and sometimes that research might involve alcohol. So in this instance, we were writing a scene, and the character was drinking bourbon. And I've never had bourbon. I like wine, I like tequila, I've never had bourbon. Sarah says she'd never had bourbon either, but she happened to have a bottle in her home somehow.
It was an unopened bottle.
It was an unopened bottle. So I said to Sarah, what are you doing? Crack open the bottle.
It's
No,
10 a.m.
It is 10 a.m. So, but we were in the middle of a scene. Like you can't pause the creative muse. We needed to get going with the scene. So she cracked open the bottle.
And so I'm looking, and I didn't want to pour it in like a nice glass because I just need to taste it. So I find one of my kids' little plastic IKEA cups, like the primary colored, and I'm in old yoga clothes, and I'm over the sink, and I pour a little bit, and I'm drinking it. And this one gets a little bossy, and she's like, "What does it taste like? Is it smoky? Is it drink more, drink more?" And so I'm pouring, drinking over the window, and I think the neighbors are probably looking in and thinking, "Oh, yeah, that explains a lot."
And what was funny about that day is that same day we were writing another scene where the character in New York City had to be peering in the window of peering out her window to see if her neighbors could be seeing what was going on. So I'm skulking around in my apartment, looking out my window, trying to peer into all of my neighbors' apartments. Like, what can I see? What can't I see?
Drinking bourbon?
No, they were not drinking bourbon.
So that is a fun part of our process for sure. So the best part? Oh no,
I was going to ask you a question. Yeah.
a trivia.
No, I was going to ask you a question. What's it like writing with a partner as opposed to writing solo, Sarah?
Oh, you have that look. You have that look like there's only one answer. It is actually. I mean, it's. I would say this if she weren't here. It is great.
I hope so.
Writing alone, it's so solitary. You're in your head and with your thoughts, and that's it, right? There's no interaction. It's all very internal. I'll put on music and, go to the kids' soccer game and write on the sidelines or whatever. But the biggest challenge for me making the transition is that, it is all very internal, whereas Greer as an editor is used to articulating her thoughts. So when we started to write, we had our Google Doc, we each had a screen, and I would get really quiet and start typing, and Greer would be talking. I'd be like, why are you talking? We're writing. What's happening?
I'd be like, you're going in a direction. You're going to waste all your time going down this alley. This isn't working. So, and vice versa. If I was typing and Sarah was talking, I was like, I can barely write. Like, this is new to me. Just stop talking.
So we figured out like a way to have a shorthand where we almost have a twin language now, where we are both writing, we're going in, we're editing, we're changing each other, we're talking on the phone, but we're talking in a way like one will move the cursor and highlight something, and the other will go, oh yeah, knowing they mean to move it up 3 paragraphs,
Yeah,
and then
it's weird.
it is weird. Yeah.
It's working.
It is, knock on wood. Yeah, we still have another act to write in book 2, but it's
yeah.
working so far.
Yeah, so we're working on our new book. And if our editor asks, we're nearly done.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter,
We're very close.
We're close. We're about
Two-thirds of the way done.
Two-thirds of the way done.
It's another psychological thriller. It's tentatively titled You're Invited. What do you guys think of You're Invited as a title? Is that good? Yeah?
She's
All
raising her eyebrows. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it is.
I think, unless it's
These
like
are
a
future
one eyebrow.
buyers of You're Invited. All
Okay.
right. And the best and worst part of working together.
Well, that's easy. I mean, the best part's each other, and the
Yeah.
worst part's technology.
Technology,
So,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, And, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Um,
What else we got? All right.
you got any other questions there? We
I
talked
think
about
we're going to do our
bourbon.
trivia.
Should we do some trivia?
Let's do a little trivia.
Okay.
Although some people here know me, so
Well, last night
thinking the
people knew
Casey
me.
girls here are going to know the answer. So you guys don't raise your hands. You may not raise your hand. You're disqualified.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. Wait, yeah, I want to hear
that's
some
gonna end
stories.
well.
about-
No. Cut them off. Cut the Irish sisters off. It's not going to, you're
the
going to hear
whole
too
suite,
much.
all the blondes back there.
All the
It's
beautiful blondes in a row
okay,
back
yep,
there.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the question. You do the trivia. You're better at that.
The trivia. Okay, so Greer and I have come to learn quite a lot about each other by being on the phone together for 5-6 hours a day.
And be going on a pre-tour.
On a pre-tour. And I mean, I hear a crinkle coming over Google Docs at 11. I'm like, are you eating your seaweed right now?
Yeah, and I hear munching. I'm like, you're eating your almonds. They're like all politeness has gone. Like in the beginning, when you're like first dating someone, you're really polite. I mean, there's certain things we don't, we do go to the bathroom separately, like close the door. But besides that, we're like chewing away. It's like
We hear our
yelling
kids
at our
come in.
kids.
We're like, oh, I thought I muted you. Sorry.
I know. I'm like, I know on Monday her groceries are delivered. Like, quite a lot about
Yes.
somebody when you're on the phone with them for however many hours a day.
But there were still surprises. So when we went on our pre-tour, we learned that there are certain quirks we each have about hotel rooms. So we want to ask you, we have prizes, and we want to ask you guys to guess which one of us has these quirks. So one of us cannot stand to have her bare feet touch the hotel room floor. How many think it's Greer?
I mean, you haven't told what the other option is yet, though.
Well, that's okay.
Okay. Everyone
Roger.
thinks, okay.
And one of us cannot stand to have trash in the hotel room wastebasket. Food trash in the hotel room wastebasket. That's also Greer.
Great. I've come to DC. People think I'm completely neurotic. In New York, everyone thinks I'm really cool.
All right,
Okay,
so
we're
who
raising it.
thinks Greer
One
is...
is one and one is the
One
other.
is the
They're
other.
not both me.
Right, right. So who thinks I'm the food trash person? One. Mark. You can't stand to have the food trash. Okay, so I got... And who thinks that Greer is the food trash? Not everybody's voting, I feel like. All right. And then...
Some people aren't allowed to vote. You disqualified them.
It was only the four blondes, the troublemakers back there. All right, so Greer is actually the food trash. She cannot stand to have it, and I cannot stand to have my bare feet.
And in my defense, I live in New York City, and if you have food in places where you shouldn't have food, there are mice, there are roaches. I mean, it's scary out there. So you've got to be
totally normal.
Yeah.
It's totally normal. Yes.
even on the mean streets of the Upper East Side. So.
And if you've ever put like luminol on a hotel room floor, it is also very scary. So you don't want to have your bare feet touching. So.
But you do towels. I didn't know that about you. You put a towel down like from place to place.
The other day when I was in New York, I forgot a towel, and the only thing handy was a New York Times. So I was spreading it out and putting it down and walking.
So then
on.
you have newsprint on your feet.
It's much better than what's on that hotel room floor. I promise you. Her dad wanted to give me slippers. He tried to give me disposable slippers. Yeah.
Okay,
Sweet.
so give
All right,
them
well,
a prize.
who guessed right? We're going to do the honor system.
A lot of people guessed right. Our bags are way down there.
All right. So who guessed right? Raise your hand. Perry, give Perry a lip gloss. No, we'll give. How about somebody over here? This woman in the gray.
Okay. What should we give her an option?
Yeah. You want to give her an option?
I mean, wine or lip gloss?
Sure.
Okay. You want wine or lip gloss?
It's a little wine.
It's little.
It's a little bottle. Don't get excited.
Don't get too excited.
The person who won it last night was like, wine, and then she
right.
got a tiny bottle. And, yeah.
Wine's great. Okay.
Wine is great.
Okay, there you go. Come on down. We're like Oprah giving things away. There you go.
All right, we'll leave that down. Oh, you got that.
I got it. Okay, down.
All right.
You want to do another trivia? Or do you want to talk more?
Let's talk a little bit more. I feel like we've left something out. What have we left out? What do you guys want to know? Do you guys have questions, first of all? Should we answer a couple questions? Yes, we go. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Greer, as being a previous editor, was it different being on the other side of the table for this book?
That's an interesting question. And you know what? What I thought about, someone asked me this last night, and I realized I didn't answer the way I really should have. The biggest difference is that when I was an editor, I'd have to get up every morning and put on my cute little black dress and go into an office. Yeah. And now it has degenerated. First I was wearing jeans. Then I was wearing like workout gear. Now I'm in like shredded leggings. Like I'm never wearing makeup. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go outside. What am I going to wear? I look like a homeless person. So that may be that's one of the big differences. But no, I mean, honestly, this is really a dream come true for me. And I loved being an editor, but I have to say being on the other side is even more fun. I was a very collaborative editor, which is why I think this dynamic works. It would not be for everyone. A lot of people are like, how in the world could you write with somebody? But for me, it was kind of like a perfect transition. And quite honestly, I never could do this alone. Like, I don't know if there are writers out there who have done this alone besides Sarah, but I mean, oh my God, I bow to you. Like, how could you sit there all day long? Like, at least with Sarah, what's so great is, like, I'll come up with an idea and I'll say something. And here's Sarah when she's thinking, not such a great idea. And I'm like, okay, I'll keep saying, I'm like, okay, I'll keep going. I'll come up with something else. But then when you say something that she's like, oh, that's a good idea. And she's like, oh, I got chills. Oh, you're so dark. You're so dark. That's a really good.
We like
that's
to egg each other on.
yeah.
What effects do you find from writing dark fiction? Do you find it cathartic? Do you find different aspects of your personality that you weren't aware of before?
That is a good question. We actually, I think, both kind of have reputations as being nice girls in general. And when Greer's husband read an early copy of our book, he looked at her and just said, "You're a very dark woman." And I think
I even had him fooled.
20 years of marriage. But we kind of egg each other on. Like, we are really, when one of us comes up with something that's a little dark and twisted, the other one's like, ooh, you got that. So we're kind of egging each other on, and it feels like a very safe place where we can throw up any crazy idea, and the other one is going to, not laugh. Maybe we'll get an aha, but, there won't be laughter at it. It's like, we kind of encourage each other to push boundaries.
Yeah, but I think maybe, and it's such a good question, we really haven't thought about this, but I think we both studied psychology, and so I think that there's a part of that interest in people, and maybe because these people are not like us, that's interesting. And then also that maybe, I don't know, maybe it is tapping into a little bit of the bad girl inside each of us.
It's a healthy way to get it out.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing we wanted to explore in this book, kind of the thematic piece of it, was that, say 10 people watch a traffic accident or a crime unfold. They're all going to pull away different, angles of it. They're all going to notice different things. They're going to say, no, the person was 10 feet away or 5 feet away. So we have different perspectives, but we also have those different perspectives about our own lives. As we look back at scenes from our own lives, as we've gained an experience, as we've gained information, we kind of recast what actually happened. So we wanted to bring that idea into our book and kind of wrap that into a very commercial, gripping plot.
And also, I mean, one of the, I think, inspirations behind the book, too, is I don't know how many of you watched The Affair, but if any of you watched that first episode where you had Noah going into the restaurant and he sees, now I'm blanking on what the woman's name is, but his love interest, and when you see his perspective, she's in the tight, short dress and she's really flirty, and then it flips and you see her perspective, and she's in a pretty, decent covering outfit, and she's acting just sort of, friendly but not flirty, and how we all bring that, your own lens to an experience, and it's somewhere in between. I mean, one of the lines of our book is that there's 3 sides to every marriage: the husband, the wives, and the truth. And I think that's true for most relationships in general. We all have your own, and we all have our own, we bring our own experience and memory, and that's our interpretation.
Are you working with the same agent that you had, Sarah? And then who is the editor on this book?
Yeah, so I've had the same agent from the beginning, Victoria Sanders. So Greer had worked with her when she signed me to write my novel. So we are working together with her. Our editor is Jen Enderlin at St. Martin's Press, who is unbelievable. She's an editor, a publisher, a marketer. She does a lot of big-name authors. Brilliant, hardworking, never seems to sleep. She was our dream. I mean, she was our number one pick for an editor. So I got lucky twice with the number one picks. Yeah.
Well, I would say when you're an editor, you also know all the editors in the business, and so it was important to me. I had kind of a short list of people who I would consider working with, and she was really at the top. And she told a very funny story the other night, because when she got our manuscript in, she'd been Facebook friends with Sarah, and she'd known me for years. We weren't great friends, but we would go out to lunch. We were friendly, and it was submitted to her, and her first reaction was just complete fear, because she just was like, oh God, what if I don't like it? And I know that feeling so well. When I was an editor, you'd get like a friend would send you something, or someone, you're like, oh God, where is this going to go? And then, she obviously fell in love with it and persevered in acquiring it. And so we just feel like we just have won the lottery with her. She's a really, really special person. So.
Oh, do you mind going to the microphone, please? Thanks. There's one right here.
After the manuscript is accepted, can you give me an idea of how the editor goes about editing the book?
Yeah, I mean, it's unique. You have done more.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because that was interesting to me, was to see how I was going to be edited. So when I edited my authors, I would read the manuscript several times. I would write line notes throughout the entire manuscript, and then I would write a very long editorial letter, and it always started with all the things I liked, and then it would be like, with that said, there's
Like
some
paragraph 3.
Oh, yeah, it was like, there's some work to be done. And then I would write, it could be, 5 pages, it could be 25 pages of notes to an author. So when we submitted our manuscript to Jen, it was entirely different. She never gave us actual line notes. She gave us, it was just like a 1-page letter pretty much with like a couple line notes and then some big picture items. And then we would just have a long talk with her and we talked it through. And I don't know if maybe we didn't need quite as much line editing because we had each other to edit our work before submitting it to her. But it was different. It was a different experience. So we didn't get that long, flowy letter. But her insights were brilliant.
Perfect, yeah.
Brilliant. And she pushed us, which is what we wanted, because even as it was pretty, we thought it was pretty polished, but she elevated it to a whole other level.
Well, I'm going to slip in a question. It's such a complicated, twisty plot, and I wonder how much of this you knew before you started writing.
We knew the end of the first act. That was what we started with, and we revised the plot countless times. We sold it on a partial, so we sold it on the first act, which is 140 pages, and then a synopsis of the rest of it. And we were trying to keep it really quiet because, we had all of our twists in something we hadn't written yet out there. But it did kind of leak out. But luckily, nobody replicated the story. But we talk for hours every day, and we're doing it with a new book too, changing, adding. We changed the ending a couple times. So it's evolving, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, Mark, I think you have to go to the microphone. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
So given the collaborative nature of your relationship, when you get each other whipped up to a frenzy about an idea or a plot twist, what's the mechanism for disentangling yourself from the idea when it becomes ridiculous?
Well, there are no bad ideas. We always say that to each other. I think one of the great things about collaborating is when you're writing alone, you don't have perspective. When you have somebody that you're working with, we lose perspective about the whole thing, but when one of us tosses out an idea, it's fresh to the other, and they can give an instinctual, good, great, whatever it is. So, and when we don't agree, it's a very respectful, one of us isn't happy, let's stop crunching that seaweed. We actually enjoy the process of talking it out and really kind of pushing until we're both happy, right?
If one of us feels something isn't working, then it's not working. Yeah. Something needs to be tweaked to make it more authentic. But we've worked ourselves into into problematic situations for sure, where we started to go down a road and wrote like there was a whole like kind of subplot thing, yes. Yeah. And then everyone, our editor was like, what's the significance of this thing? And she was really right. We kind of like elevated this one point to make it like this big aha moment, and it just wasn't. It didn't. So then we had to just go back and tone it back. And then our editor, though, has a dark side too, because she really wanted us to darken one of the characters to make her a lot more devious, and that was also
right, yeah.
And she was right. It was a really good call. So
yeah, but our first draft, bad ideas. Our first draft had, we thought about throwing in ghosts and
orphans.
We were just like, did we ever show that to anybody? Or?
No,
we never did.
We were just throwing out ideas. But the first draft was even that first draft that didn't have ghosts and orphans. Our first 15 pages, they were horrible.
We thought they were so good.
We thought they were. I was like on this high of like, oh my God, I'm a writer. This is so great. And if you look back, it is so embarrassing. So I don't know how many people.
I can't even read them.
I kind of want. I feel a little sick even thinking. Horse-drawn carriage. It was going to be in Chicago. I mean, there was a lot of revising.
It's bad.
So you said that you worried that your ideas would get out. Is that really a problem?
It was not. I mean, we might have been a little paranoid or neurotic, but the book did get out, and it got sold in a number of countries before we had actually written it and got optioned.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys read this, which I hope you all will, there is a very big twist at the end of part 1 that we've never seen in a book before. And if someone could get that idea, they wouldn't do it the same way, but they could have done that, and we still had to finish, two more parts of a book. And also it had already leaked to film studios as well. So we ended up selling the film rights a week after we sold that partial manuscript, which was, it was really exciting. But we didn't know how long it was going to take us to finish. It was just important to keep that kind of secretive.
Yeah. Which luckily we did.
Yeah.
So this one's for Greer. I was wondering if writing is going to change your editing style, like how you see other people's books from writing a different book.
Oh,
that's a good question.
That is a good question. Yeah. I think I feel like I read with two hats. Sometimes I can really pick up a book and just enjoy the book for what it is and not sit there and scrutinize that there's word repetitions or why did they do X, Y, Z or this character or that character. And sometimes I really will be reading something, I'm just like, oh my God, why did they do this? So, but I was like that as an editor too. I think probably most writers are that way as well, that you sometimes just really wonder why someone made a decision, or conversely, I'm often just in awe. I think maybe that's actually what's happened more, is I appreciate people who can, like a turn of phrase or the way they develop something. I'm like, wow, that was really, really masterful. Wish I could do that.
Any more questions? All right. Well.
Do more trivia.
Oh yeah. Which trivia you want to do? Oh, one more. Yeah, Jim.
We're wondering if you can go back to where you started in introducing yourselves and tell us what some of those favorite books you had in common were.
Yes.
Okay. That's a good one.
That is a good one. These are good questions.
Yeah, you guys are good. You guys are sharp. We gotta up our game. So before I go to sleep,
I was just gonna say that.
That was on both of our lists.
Yeah.
It's about a woman who, every night when she goes to sleep, her memory is erased and she wakes up thinking she's like 25 and she's actually 40. And she wakes up next to a man she doesn't recognize, and that's her husband. So that was, and Nicole Kidman starred in the movie. Yeah.
We love Leah Moriarty. So I think she is so masterful about creating relatable female characters, but there's also suspense and tension in her books.
And we looked at different voices. Like we looked at The Weird Sisters, which uses kind of different techniques about interesting voices, because we wanted to tell, this from kind of an interesting point of view. So maybe it wasn't necessarily the plot in some cases. It was just books that stuck with us for one reason or another. So that was one on my list.
I think, Gillian Flynn, is a real master.
Girl, of course, yeah.
It's fun. It's actually such a good question. I kind of would be curious to go back and look at those books. Then we had some that were not. I loved The Help. Our book has nothing to do with The Help, but that was strong female protagonist there.
Yeah,
so
complicated women.
Yeah.
All right, so another which trivia are we going to do? Because last night we had a difference of opinion for which one. Do you want to do that?
Oh, I think you're...
Because everybody here will know that. Oh, you want to do... Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone will know that. So what was the other one? I don't know. What was the other one?
All right, so let's do the one some people might know. We'll again leave off the four blondes.
Okay, the four.
So Greer and I have very similar personalities in some ways, but again, there are some differences. So we discovered that when we were flying together on pre-tour, one of us used to have a phobia about flying on airplanes, but has since trying to take lessons to become a pilot, has already taken one. And the other of us has absolutely no fear when flying, but when she gets on a plane, she counts the rows to the emergency exit and then crosses herself. So if you think Greer is the one who was scared and is now taking a lesson, raise your hand. All right. And if you think that's me, who was scared and is now, they all know that I'm the one who was scared.
I know, but the punchline to all of this is that I'm Jewish. My husband's Catholic. I'm the one who crosses. But I do it because my husband's Catholic. He's not practicing, but he's just grown up. He just does this. He is a nervous flyer. So he crosses himself before and after. And for some reason, from just traveling so much with him, I'm just like, well, I don't know.
And now I do it when I get on it.
Look, it doesn't mean anything to me. So anyway, so it's yeah.
So we got another prize.
Yeah.
So all right, who guessed right? This is like the honor system. Do you want to? Did Barry guess it? Do you want these women right?
Yeah.
Make your lip gloss. Yeah. Right.
Who else are we going to be lucky?
This is something that's a theme. It's mentioned in our book. So.
Yeah, it's mentioned.
Yeah.
As is wine. So
Yes.
don't think that you don't have something that's part of our book too.
Or the
So.
writing process occasionally.
Yeah.
Well, if there's...
I think
there we
you have
go.
to go to the microphone. So the question is, tell us a little bit about your new collaboration. So we have to be careful. We can't talk much about it because it may change, first of all.
There may be a ghost or an orphan. Who knows?
But it's, again, it's a psychological thriller with strong, complicated female characters. It's titled You're Invited. Can we say any more? Probably not.
Well,
No,
I was
that's
gonna
it.
say, that's all she can say.
Yeah.
I'm cutting her off.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have books behind... Oh, we've got...
Oh.
How are you
Yes, Ms. Baker.
balancing? Hi. How are you balancing writing with Greer and also working on your own next novel as well? Sorry.
How are you doing with that,
Sorry.
Sarah? How's that going?
So I'm still writing. I still have a contract for a few solo novels. So I have one due in. Can I have that wine? Actually, due in July. So it's a little tricky. My preference would maybe be to write one a year rather than two. But I am going to begin. Can you right now? It just, if I get into a groove, the way I wrote my last one, which I had to write very quickly, if I get into a routine, it's almost like muscle memory. If I go to a coffee shop and I have a good writing session, I have to go to the same coffee shop and I have to sit in the same chair and play the same music. And if somebody's in my chair, it's like the day is ruined. I sit there and kind of glare at them until they move. But it tricks your brain into thinking. My psychologist friend is nodding. She's like, oh yeah, I know it. I know what that's called. It just kind of tricks your brain into thinking this is where I'm supposed to write. And so my last book, I just had a routine. It was at Bread and Chocolate on Connecticut Avenue. I would sit there, I'd write for a couple hours, and I got a book done quite quickly. So that will be my balancing act. I will do that again when we're done with book 2.
That's right. When we're done.
Which is any day now if our editor asks.
So you said the movie rights. So who would you want to play the
We love this question. Yeah, this is so fun.
This is so fun. So at the moment, this subject to change. I mean, and we will have no say in this, FYI. But it's fun to fantasize, right? So we've thought about Naomi Watts, maybe, or Scarlett Johansson, because we've got some good hot blonde on the cover. And then you want to take the male? I thought this is
Leonardo DiCaprio, I think, would be really interesting for Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We might take a meeting with him. We're not sure.
Yeah.
He might have to try out for us, but. Oh, hello. Yes, yeah. Well, we take a meeting with him too.
Yeah. And then reject
Ryan
him.
Gosling.
I know.
That was funny.
All right. Well, we have books behind the register, and we're going to form a signing line just to the right of Sarah. And thank you both so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Great crowd. Good question. Thank you. What a great crowd.
Oh, they're our favorite crowd. Oh.